afternoon or good morning, and welcome to our first virtual Connections US session of the year, all focused on the future of the smart home. After our kickoff event at CES this year, looking at innovation and 2025 trends, I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates, and so pleased to be hosting this conversation today. Before we get started, we always love to thank our sponsors. These are really the companies, many leading the space, really investing in fostering the conversations between companies to move the market forward. We thank them so much for their support. And if you're unfamiliar with any of these companies, go ahead and check them out today. This session today is the first in several conversations that we host throughout the year, all around the consumer's use of technology in the home, what's happening in the broader kind of connected home and smart home security, energy management markets. We're hosting today's virtual session. We also have one in October, and then in May, we have our flagship conference that happens in May. It's an in-person event, and we certainly welcome you to join us for several days, 3 days of research, of networking, of hearing from your peers, what they're focusing on and how they're tackling some of those big, sticky, thorny strategy questions, et cetera. So we certainly welcome you to join us at Connections in May. We do have our early bird pricing going on right now. If you register before March 14th, you get a $200 discount. So I'm sure our team will leave a link to how to register in the chat, but also you can scan this QR code for more information about the event, the agenda. Also, call for speakers is open if you're interested in speaking at Connections in May. We do have quite a few, speaker forms that have come in already, and our speaker committee will be starting to place folks on different panels. So if you're interested in speaking, you'll want to do that as well. And I also just wanted to take a minute to really recognize the awesome conversations that we had at Connections Summit at CES. We're so honored to be an official partner event at CES for 19 years now, and I pulled some of these pictures from 10 years ago when we were talking about smart home and what was going on in the smart home in 2015, and then this year in 2025 we had fantastic conversations around the impact of AI in the smart home, around platforms and standards, and the vision and where we're getting progress to that sort of whole home connected helpful home vision. We talked about residential security, energy. We talked about the multifamily markets, and perhaps most importantly, we talked about where's the money and getting consumer IoT and smart home services to profitability and sustainable business models. So hopefully lots of you, I saw a lot of you there, which is great. And in fact, many of you joined our Connections Summit reception. It was great to connect with many of you again, and I made some new friends, which I love, and of course got to walk the show floor for several days and see what was new out there and what new features and products that you're bringing to market. It was really, really exciting. Thank you again to Smart Rent for sponsoring that reception. It was a really great time. So today I'm going to start off our session sharing a little bit of Parks Associates' point of view of where the market is, some of our research and the things that we think everyone should be looking out for this year. And then I'm very excited to invite 4 really interesting and innovative companies to talk about what they saw at CES, what they think the biggest trends are for the year, and challenges ahead in 2025. So we'll be hearing from Nuki, from Ladle Cooking, from eufy Security, Anker Innovations, as well as from Flic, the wireless smart button. So very excited to welcome them in just a little bit. As always, we welcome your questions. There is a questions tab in this GoToWebinar platform, so please go ahead and submit your questions, and our team can answer them, or I can take them live as well. So with that, I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about 4 really key themes here today. The first one being around, what we're seeing as far as the growth of the market generally. How is the smart home growing? what's holding it back, what areas of growth, do we see that are significant, how is the buyer base changing, and what does that mean? Some perspective on the control story, which is so impactful for really the consumer's experience of how they interact with devices in the smart home, which gets to interoperability, gets to standards, gets to control platforms, and of course AI and the companies that consumers are trusting to share that experience around different devices, and also that they trust to share their data with. And then finally, bringing more attention to where else there is value in the ecosystem, where's there opportunity for growth, opportunity for expansion, and maybe looking at things a little bit differently than just direct to consumer. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into growth in the smart home. So looking kind of across pretty much a 10-year view here, we have seen devices that consumers are using across the whole connected home landscape just about double. Consumers use about 17 devices connected devices in their home today. A lot of that is really consumer electronics, connected entertainment, mobile computing devices, smart TVs, streaming media players, but also there's been growth pretty much in every category. So growth in smart home, growth in connected health devices as well. When we asked consumers about whether or not they own any core smart home device, so that meaning a light, lock, thermostat, video doorbell, garage door opener, smart appliances, cameras, 45% of US households now tell us that they do own one of these core devices. This does not include smart speakers or smart displays, which are very important control devices for the home, but they also are very multifunctional, and consumers tell us that first and foremost, they use them as speakers to listen to audio, to listen to music, to listen to podcasts, or to do things like set timers or ask for information. So while they're very, very critical to the smart home, this 45% does not actually include smart speakers and smart displays. So it's kind of those other core smart home devices. Lights, I mentioned water leak detectors, smart sprinkler systems, the types of home devices that are made more capable with internet connectivity, applications, and intelligence. So big growth over a 10-year period, five times growth in that adoption rate. When we look at specific devices within that overall kind of adoption, of course, no one device, not including smart speakers and smart displays, hits that 45% or even 30% number. The best adopted devices and kind of the hottest devices that we see going into 2025 are these four right here. Video security devices generally. So whether that's a video doorbell or a camera, and increasingly locks, getting some video integration, garage door suites, having cameras integrated with them as well. They're really core to the smart home story. They've been the leading device for several years. They continue to lead an adoption of about 1/5 of US internet households tell us that they have a camera, and about the same say that they have about a video doorbell. They are also a critical device, a critical platform for services. So besides security systems as a whole, if you think just about standalone devices, video devices are perhaps the most successful devices we see in attaching services, which makes sense because you've got video storage that you have to account for. There are intelligent video analytics. We saw a lot at CES around smart video search from Ring and others, being able to search through the video that you've captured for key moments, not just, security related, but, that funny thing that happened, or that specific person that came to the door, as you're looking through your video feeds. So a very important platform for services and very successful at attaching paid services onto those devices. The next product area that is definitely trending well within the smart home is access control generally, which we generally count locks and garage door openers. In this category, we see this as really kind of the next product category that's seeing more mass adoption. When we ask consumers what they most like to would like their smart devices to do in the home, what they're most interested in, whether or not they have devices yet today. I think it's 12 out of the top 15 of 90 unique automations and integrations that we tested were access control related. People want to know what's happening at the front door. They want ease of going in and out. They want to be able to have that convenience of letting others in as needed. And so a lot of great interest in smarter, convenient access control. We're also seeing a lot of innovation in this category, looping in biometrics, whether that be fingerprint unlock or facial recognition. Also some more integrations with video right into the device or integrations between other video devices and the lock itself. Integrations with outside partners like delivery services, Walmart Plus in-home service or Amazon Key, right? What other services can be, interesting partnerships? We see another one related to healthcare, actually, where one of the access control companies partnered with a connected health company so that if someone's having an emergency at home, first responders don't have to bust down that door. They can automatically gain access through the smart lock. Really interesting and smart experiences there. Two other devices that we think, again, are trending really well and very hot in the smart home right now is thermostats, after video devices, one of the best adopted devices in the smart home. They provide clear and immediate value, which is very important to more mass market consumers, where they can see, hey, my investment in this device really pays off and saved energy costs. And also, besides, what people might like to do with smart home devices in their home, when we say, what are you actually integrating your devices for today? Energy is right up there with security and what people are doing with routines in the home. Finally, I wanted to give a shout out to smart lights. Smart lights have been growing in availability. There are so many new form factors out there. It's not just bulbs, right? It's not just outside kind of security lights. We're talking ropes and triangles and hexagons and all sorts of colors, and they really bring a lot of fun. They're also one of the top aftermarket devices that security system owners are adding to their security system. So they may not have thought to buy smart lights right when they acquire their security system, but our data is showing growing year over year that security system owners are adding smart lights onto their platform. Okay, so that being said, I do want to also bring some reality to the market that, the smart home, individual smart home device categories and smart home kind of growth as a market tends to be a slow and steady growth story. This is adoption numbers compared to some more mature technologies, or even not necessarily more mature, but higher growth rate technologies. Like you can see the smartwatch and the smart speaker and display being better adopted today than most smart home device categories. This also leads into what types of products we're talking about. You may very well find that you want to update your watch every few years as new models come out and new colors and new capabilities, but people generally don't want to have to rip out their lock or definitely not replace their smart appliance every few years. So we're talking about products that have a longer life cycle, which again makes this somewhat of a more slow and steady growth type market. We also are coming off of a few years of some challenging macroeconomic conditions for smart home and residential security generally, with the high interest rates really limiting some of the housing market. That really is a key time that people buy smart home devices and also security systems. Also a key time that people switch other types of home service providers, like their internet service providers. And so there's kind of been this limitation as fewer people are moving, and of course new builds as well being a little bit slow. That does impact buying home devices and products related to home renovation and related to home buying generally. One other big picture trend that's really impacting the market, and many of you working in this market probably feel this very strongly, is just the number of brands that are active in the smart home market today. We went through and counted all of the brands that we see on the market, which we track in our smart home and security market tracker every quarter, and tallied them up and said, how many brands do we see are active in the US market alone, right, in each of these categories. We've just published that with Cardinal Peak in a complimentary white paper that I encourage you to download. And you can see that we now see 91 unique brands in the market for smart cameras, and just 50 or more brands in smart thermostats. So it's gotten very, very, very competitive. Those who are market leaders constantly on the march to understand how to differentiate the premium tier from other brands, how to get ahead of commoditization. So a big trend we know that everybody is working on. And as we think about competition, when we think about 2025, we're hearing big news, coming out that Apple is likely to be expanding its smart home play. Today, smart home kind of presence from Apple is relatively limited. Their smart speaker is not one of the top smart speakers. It's not all that well adopted. However, anything that Apple does, especially for its iPhone, baked in loyal kind of user base, A, brings a ton of attention to whatever market it's entering, and B, can definitely stimulate growth and new user behaviors and new buying patterns for sure. One thing that's interesting, kind of expecting Apple to be coming to market with a kind of a larger smart home play here, that we went and looked in, is we asked consumers in our ongoing survey what platforms they're using to control their smart home devices. And then we asked them, okay, well, you might, because we do find that they use multiple platforms, not just one platform. We're typically in a multi-platform world, especially the more devices that you own, you're likely to be using multiple platforms. Then we ask, well, okay, which do you use the most? Do you find that you're using the most to control your devices? And while, again, it's relatively limited, just about 10 to 15% of smart home device users are telling us that they're using HomeKit or Siri to control their smart home devices the most. It's been growing year over year. So expect a big push from Apple and smart home this year, and everyone's going to have to figure out how to benefit from the attention that's going to bring to smart home, but also to perhaps up their game and respond to whatever it is that Apple does wind up bringing into the market. Okay, so if you're a long-time viewer of Parks Associates content, this is not going to be a new message for you, but it's really important, so I just wanted to make sure to include it today. We are in a different place today when it comes to who's buying your devices and subscribing to your services than we were even just 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, before the pandemic, and back in 2018, we saw 63% of respondents who owned a smart home device self-identifying as an innovator. They're the first people to buy tech. They're there for the tech. They're interested in technology. And that's only 20% of the buyer base at the end of 2023. So instead, we now see 37%, the biggest bulk of the user base today actually considers themselves early majority. An early majority type buyer is somebody who can relate to new technology. They understand the use case, but it's got to be practical. They're not buying just because for the tech, just because the technology is interesting, or they really need to be able to see what am I getting back for this dollar that I spend? You really have to show them, prove the value, and be there to support them. And one of the things that is really allowing more of the kind of middle market, mass market buyer to come into this market, is because, yes, the number of brands offering products has expanded to such an extent that, of course, it's easy defined these types of brands, but also price points in most categories have come down, making at least the entry-level products more affordable and accessible to more households. So one thing that we think is critically important as you have more middle market users is to be able to support them and give them the choice in how they want to be supported. Some consumers are going to be quite comfortable installing their own devices. Others really are going to want to have professional installation. Everybody needs to be supported kind of across the board, but especially at that setup. We find that that initial setup of a device is a key time where things go wrong, where the technology gets put in the drawer because it's just too cumbersome or couldn't figure it out or it was taking too long, or even going into device returns, which nobody wants. And just alongside that, I think this is really interesting that this also raises the demand for smarter networking and better networking in the home. We find that one of the key pain points that consumers have around connected devices generally is them falling off the network, not being able to get them back on the network, or not wanting to deal with that. The more devices, the more smart home devices people own, the more interested they are in advanced networking in the home. So for our internet service provider friends, for those working in routers, et cetera, or supporting that ecosystem, there's a real demand from smart home device owners for more support and services that can optimize for them or automatically tell when something's fallen off of the network and support them in bringing those devices back on. Also critical for all of the device and solution providers, because one of the key metrics we know is, how many of your devices, your smart devices, have actually been turned on and connected to the network, and how many are actually staying up and staying on the network. Okay, let's talk about interoperability and the control picture. So along with the market going a little bit more middle market, we're actually seeing an interesting relationship here with how people are controlling their devices. We are seeing actually a growth in the number of people saying that, the percentage of people who say that they are primarily controlling their smart home devices using a single app for a single product, which is sort of the opposite of, the more devices that you get, you'd want more unified control of these things working together and being optimized together. But with such an influx of newer device owners, we actually have more people today than a few years ago saying they're on their first device, or they're just on their second device. So we have this big group of people who are on their first or second device who may not need that sort of more unified control yet. And then we have folks who have been here for 10 years and have 20 devices around their house and very much need a hub or an application or voice assistant or agent, that can be smarter about control in the home. And who it is that consumers are interested in most offering them some sort of unified application to control their smart home is still somewhat anyone's game. Consumers do think first of kind of the tech giants. They know that they trust that, hey, if I have an application from the same company that makes my smartphone, I know that it's going to work, perhaps with my products. They have that trust that it's just going to be easy to use and I'll be able to figure it out. I use their other products. Other types of, providers who definitely have a role to play here include home security system providers, product manufacturers who now have their own, control platforms, as well as internet service providers. And one thing that's really always interesting about home security system providers is that the thing that's really pops around the types of respondents who choose them to be their kind of unified home experience provider is when we say, well, why did you select this type of provider? They say it's because I trust them. I trust them with my data. So a real big advantage there, particularly as we get more and more into the era of AI and some of the data I'll show you in a second around consumer concerns there. Let's go ahead and actually jump to AI. And I only have a few minutes left before we bring our panel in. We do, of course, in 2025 expect major investments in AI. We see a lot of you working on features that utilize AI, particularly in the smart home. It's around providing greater context, identifying who's in the home. Is it a known or unknown person, or even personal identity to be able to unlock a certain feature, the ability to communicate better, not just person to device, device to device, right? And then also, of course, unlock new areas of value. That said, 71% of consumers say that they are concerned about society's ability to control AI and use it responsibly. So we'll have a big focus all year on how to be transparent, what this actually means for marketing the work that you're doing. Many in the industry are working very hard at sort of agentic AI, where the AI agent can make autonomous decisions on the user's behalf and take some of those jobs off of their shoulders. But consumers really need to trust that when the agent does that, they're going to be making the right decisions at the right time for the right person that's in the household. So very complicated, a lot more news to come there. Okay, finally, I do want to talk about unlocking value for others in the ecosystem and some of the big areas of growth that we see. One thing that we've been focused on in the kind of back half of the year, and we're about to publish our study from some of the data we captured in our back half of the year last year, is really around other service providers to the home and how devices can play a role in unlocking value, not just for the consumer, but for other types of players that have to serve the consumer at home. So for instance, we did a whole battery of research around pool monitoring services, fire safety monitoring, water monitoring, HVAC services, appliance monitoring, home technology support services that leverage smart home devices or other technologies in the home to really move some of these very traditional services that are oftentimes provided by local small businesses to be able to kind of move them to the next generation of services and allow for things like remote monitoring and support, like just even being able to, schedule a call in an app, have remote support with a technician, be able to, on the pool monitoring service side, utilize advanced video analytics to understand if someone's in the pool when they shouldn't be. So really interesting use cases. And we saw some pretty broad willingness to interest, first of all, and then willingness to pay for technology-enabled services that are really more traditional services. So not necessarily having to come from the product manufacturer, but the product and the feature set being a suite of something that an HVAC dealer might be offering or a pool service provider might be offering. So a lot of untapped value there for what's a pretty traditional market that still has a lot of upside in being disrupted. So as we look out into 2025, we're just encouraging everybody to think about that middle market consumer and maybe, focusing less on, hey, this technology is awesome, to what am I doing practically for your customer and why is that valuable? We definitely see intelligence and AI and also integrations between devices really defining the experience in the connected home. And then services make sustainable businesses. Some devices have higher attachment rates for services to the device, to kind of depending on the device type. But there's all sorts of other services that can be provided around the ecosystem if you think big and think broad. There's some big questions facing industry leaders, how to serve an increasingly mainstream end user, we think is going to be a critical one this year. How can consumer IoT business units operate profitably? What's my competitive edge in the AI arms race? How are standards efforts unlocking new opportunity or perhaps competition and maybe eroding your competitive edge? What market segments are ripe for expansion, and how can I leverage my assets to better serve other ecosystem players? I'm very excited in just a minute to invite our panelists to talk about some of what they're focused on for this work. But I just want to spend one last minute here sharing that our roadmap for the year of everything that we are focusing on is out. If you have any interest in understanding better what it is that we're focused on for the year, we'd love to share this information with you. One of the studies that's happening very early in this year is actually calling for your perspective. So every few years, we love to take the temperature of the product managers and strategy decision makers and executives working in consumer IoT and understand how you're seeing, market evolution and growth, and what are some of the things that are challenging you, and what are the key metrics that you're looking for, and then be able to report back, what the executives in the industry are really seeing in the smart home space. So we would love your participation. That survey is going to be fielded about late Q1, so March into April. And so we are working on the questionnaire. If you'd love to participate in that effort, you can raise your hand and sign up. We have a simple form, but we'll also, send you out more information regardless of whether or not you filled the form. But if you do participate, all qualified participants are offered a free pass to Connections as a thank you. So we'd love to learn more about how you're seeing the market, and then our plan is to reveal those learnings at Connections. So please join us there, and we'd love to get, again, your input in that study effort. And finally, some of what I shared today was published in the Cardinal Peak white paper. So we encourage you to download that as well. I see some good questions coming in. We do have to jump into our panel, but I'm going to look at those and see if we can pull those into our overall panel discussion. So thank you so much for the questions. And with that, I'd love to invite our panelists to go ahead and join me. You can turn on your cameras and there we go. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining. Hi, Sumati.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for joining today. So we are talking about several kind of big picture themes as we kick off the year. We love to first say, what did you guys see at CES, whether you were there in person or watching from afar, what announcements or trends did you think were really interesting? We're going to talk about other trends just generally that everybody's watching to impact the smart home this year, and then also what challenges that you're tackling in 2025. I'd love to go around the horn and get everybody to introduce themselves. Looks like we might be missing Joel for the moment, and hopefully he's able to get in. But I'm going to ask each of you to just introduce yourselves, take a minute to tell us a little bit about your organization and your role there. And so let's start with Sumati.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Great to be here with all of you. So I'm Sumati Sharan, and I'm the founder CEO of Ladle Cooking. We're an AI-powered sous chef and brand engagement platform targeting the smart kitchen market, which, as you guys probably already know, is part of the smart home market, and it's expected to be about, valued at $91 billion by 2032. So a little bit about me. I have 20 plus years of tech experience, having worked in AI home and IoT for companies like Amazon and Intel. And then I also actually went to go work for Unomi. You guys, some of you might know them. They got acquired by Allegion. And now I am building Ladle for the last 18 months and helping people cook what they want to eat.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. We also have Eric with eufy. Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm the head of global communications for Anker Innovation. So most people know us as a global leader in mobile charging. I've been with the company for about 7 years out of about the 12 years or so we've been in existence, or about half the ride so far. Over those 7 years, we've expanded into a number of consumer electronic spaces. So eufy, which we'll talk about today probably a lot, which is home security, home appliances, a big part of our smart home push. But we also have Soundcore, which does smart audio and home projectors, entertainment, and a variety of other brands working in smart energy as well. So my background actually started in entertainment. So I was working in early iterations of streaming, sort of from the early stages of video to streaming, and then moved into technology, which I've been working in probably for about the last 15 to 17 years of my life. And actually, most of it's been predominantly in smart home. and mobile phones. So I love talking about this subject. I've been involved in it a very long time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us today. And Joacim, who's the founder and chairman of Flic, the wireless smart button, which we saw at CES. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about Flic.
Yeah, hello, and thanks a lot for having me. My name is Joacim. I'm, as I said, CEO and founder of Flic. So what we do is smart buttons. We claim to have invented that space when we started about 12 to 13 years ago. And since then, we've been quite focused on smart buttons, so physical push buttons. And we've seen a lot of success within the smart home for that. So we've been very focused on that. But the other things we do with the same technology is also personal alarms for lone workers or elderly care. But super excited to talk about smart home trends today, since we've been doing that now for 12 years. And also very excited to launch our new product that got a lot of awards during CES, which is called Flic Duo, which is like the smallest light switch you can imagine on the wall, but with the added benefit that you can remove it from the wall and then use it as a smart home controller to control every aspect of your smart home. So excited about that.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, congrats to all of you on a great CES. We saw all of your organizations there. So let's start off. Actually, I did want to touch on CES. It is a really nice way to start off the year. We always find value in it, no matter how many years I go. And I think I'm not going to be overwhelmed. I get a little overwhelmed. There's so much going on. Love to understand, and somebody, maybe I can start with you here. What were your biggest takeaways? What did you see that intrigued you? You're each working in, somebody feel like you're working specifically in kitchen, really, which is very interesting. Is there anything that really stood out to you?
Actually, Jennifer, I think one of the things that stood out to me is, of course, one thing we all saw, right, this year is there's AI everywhere, or at least people are saying there's AI in everything. And I think what you're seeing is that it's starting to make an impact in the kitchen market. It's making an impact in the smart home market, of course. And, being at Amazon, I remember in 2017, 2018, we were trying to do certain things then, which were difficult to do, but they are much more able, more ability to do that today. But I think the big thing that I was really noticing is the consumer focus this time at CES. It used to be typically more, the last few years have been more B2B, about companies trying to sell to different companies, and then consumers get the end of whatever they get. But I think now there are a lot of products that are coming that are really consumer focused, and consumers are asking about what's good for me, what do I want to have in my life. You just did amazing. I just caught the last few minutes of your analysis that you were going through. That I think we're finally having people say that we want to be actually more in control of our life and have whether it's smart home or smart kitchen, help us in being able to live our lives in a more healthy way, in an easier way, and also something that's more meaningful on a day-to-day. Couple things I noticed at CES, specifically getting out of some of these, the bigger announcements, was one is the whole impact of health and sleep. So one of these were these Oslo sleep buds. I don't know if any of you noticed those, but really focusing on these sleep buds making people's ability to have better sleep. I think we've been hearing the last few years more and more people realizing that burning the candle is not the best thing, but being able to have better sleep and monitoring that, I thought was pretty cool. The other one I actually noticed was the Omnia, which is this mirror, which is able to take all your health stats and does a body scan and health scan, and is able to actually provide that to your doctor in terms of real-time measurements, and again, helping that for your health. And I think those are the things, learnings we are taking into Ladle, and as we are building out a platform to help people cook what they want to eat, being able to do that, to be able to support their healthy ability to cook healthily for themselves is actually one of our big drivers.
Yeah, fantastic. I got a chance to see a little bit of the health stuff as well, and was able to have a device scan my eyes and give me my own prescription. And that was really interesting. And they're doing kiosks in different malls and stuff and trying to expand access. But yeah, health always really interesting. I love your point about tech serving the user. And I feel like that is definitely a big trend what we're seeing, whether you're talking about the big tech giant platforms as well as what's happening in the smart home and digital privacy and security conversations around maybe moving more computation and storage to the edge rather than the cloud. It's my data and how is technology serving me, and also even on the user interface conversation, right? So more, it needs to be serving me and what I want to accomplish in the home rather than kind of serving the companies. Eric, I'd love to go to you and hear what really stood out for you at CES. And then
So, yeah, I've sort of talked about the smartphone segment, and I feel like I've watched numerous iterations of time over the last, say, 15 to 20 years. If we looked at smartphones and it was a race for the OS, which OS was going to win, or is it cloud? Now it's edge. And I think with AI, you're seeing exactly the same thing. So consumers are going to ultimately be trapped in the middle as everyone is racing to develop the perfect AI and stand out with their systems. So for me, the thing that I'm most excited to see are services like Matter and Thread. Because as everyone's trying to develop their own systems, I'll look at you're talking about Flic is a great example. You're creating a really cool, innovative product that can be adapted to an individual's needs, but you're having to navigate a myriad of different smart voice systems out there. So when you look at Matter, Thread, and systems like that, it becomes a great equalizer. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of that conversation start to percolate up in a lot of people's conversations in smart home products, because they realize that more and more consumers, especially younger consumers, they're very pragmatic. They have a myriad of different smart home devices in their home. They're not necessarily looking at a specific brand, but then that compounds the issue where they're trying to set up and work with all these different devices with all of these different services. And even us on the eufy side, where we're developing smart home products, it's the vocal minority. You have certain segments of people that use certain voice services, may be louder, wanting us to support certain solutions, but it might only be about 10% of what we're ultimately putting our development cycle into. So again, I think Matter, Thread, and services that allow both large and small consumer electronic companies to develop systems that can ultimately support all the different voice services was the most exciting to see, because I think it's going to help us a lot. It's going to help the consumer a lot. And while this race for the perfect AI and all these systems continues to be battled out, the consumer isn't stuck, trying to ponder which one should I pick. So I'll go with that, Matter.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a Matter slide in my presentation and I skipped it because I was totally running out of time. But we had a great panel related to Matter and interoperability and standards. And what you mentioned as it being the great equalizer, I think also causes some brands concern, right? Well, is it gonna, what does it do to my special sauce, and will my capabilities be supported or not supported? And maybe you can expand a little bit about how you think about that at eufy.
I mean, I think, we have our areas we have core competencies, and we have areas that we're trying to fill the gap. And I think as you look at services that we're going to launch later this year, which I can't talk about right now, as Eufy, we don't charge monthly subscriptions. We don't think people should be renting a product that they've already purchased. So, that's a big part of our DNA and a big part of our sort of competitive branding. And so as we look forward to say, okay, but we do still need to increase our revenue. So we need to find ways that are authentic with that point of view, but also allow consumers to expand, especially in home security. There are other things like monitoring and other services. That is not our core competency. We're not going to go out and develop a whole new company to satisfy that aspect of the business. So we need to develop partnerships. And again, I look at Matter as something similar. We were the first home security system to develop AI years and years ago. our own algorithms to satisfy or deal with some of the issues that we saw in the marketplace, false alarms, endless, messages every time it saw the branch move. But systems have been developed subsequently that are really good. And so we want to make sure that we're developing our own secret sauce, but we're also leveraging the best aspects of other solutions out there and pragmatically delivering the best solution to the consumer possible. We're not going to be great at everything, and we can only put so much innovation into so many different areas. But also not just us, but if you look at smaller innovators out there, they're not going to have the resources to develop all their own algorithms. They're going to have to take advantage of other solutions. And again, whether it's Matter, Thread, or some other solution in the future, I'm excited to see something that creates a level playing field for other innovators to be able to jump in the space.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, Joacim, I'd love to hear from you as well, what you noticed at CES and some of the big trends that you're watching for this year to impact the market and your business.
Yeah, sure. We're also very involved in Matter, so we're super excited about that. Since we've always done an actuator, a push button, we've always been forced to integrate with other systems, and that's always been a big hurdle for us. That this button can do almost anything, but we haven't actually done this integration yet. So no, you cannot control that specific brand of smart lights or whatever it can be. And Matter promises to solve that. We haven't quite seen that yet, but we are quite invested, and I'm confident that will happen, if not sooner than later. So excited about that. Everyone is talking about Matter, but it also becomes this thing that it's like you gotta have it. Like if you're in a smart home, you better have that, and if you don't do it, that's like that's you being weird suddenly. But I guess at CES you see what you want to see, and I saw a very, very big presence from AARP, the Organization for Retired Technology. And that's very exciting. You talked about that also earlier, Jennifer, the merge between smart home technologies that's really for early adopters in the beginning, and now merging with the senior support and elderly care and all that. And that's specifically interesting for us, I think, because we're also doing alarm systems. So that trend of merging smart home with elderly care is something that I'm quite passionate about. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think AARP has done a fantastic job really leading the conversation and trying to attract investment. As many companies start with the innovator in mind, which tends to be a younger, more affluent, type of technology customer. And so really trying to push that investment in technologies that are developed with the senior in mind. We actually have a question that came in from the audience here that I'm going to sort of shoehorn into this conversation a little bit, but I'm linking in for a reason to follow up on what you mentioned. So we have a question that came in that says, how does Stargate AI, how will it impact the market? So I don't know if you guys saw that it was a big Trump announcement, $500 billion AI project. And it says, can you please identify an application that can provide 25 to 35% ROI with break even 18 months? I think these are kind of sky high asks here. But the one place that I feel like has not been really unlocked actually is senior care. When you think about the demographics, when you think about the amount of healthcare services and sort of underserved population here, that technology, I don't know about Stargate AI in general, but can really unlock. It's just been a very, very difficult market because a lot of times you have a different buyer than the end user. Maybe people on fixed incomes, right? Used to getting healthcare type services through Medicare, right? So it's a very complicated market, but it's an interesting nut to crack. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, go ahead, Sumati.
Jennifer, actually, if you think about it, so this is interesting, right? I think the Stargate announcement of the $500 billion it's a big announcement, right? And I agree with you. It's like, how do you go about this? But just as everybody's talking about Matter, right? In the smart home market, a few years ago when I was with Amazon, when the conversation about Matter started, right? It was all, you had Google and you had, Google Home and you had HomeKit and you had Alexa. And really the consumer adoption wasn't there because all these different appliances worked on different networks, right? Basically each of them. And then you had the standardization of Matter. I think what AI is giving us, and the whole different topic is how do you have all these big companies work together, right? Because you're going to have OpenAI and you're going to have Oracle and you're going to have Microsoft and they all have their fiefdoms and how they work together is a different thing. But I think if we take a look at the Matter example, and what AI is going to be able to do is create those personalized experiences for people, right? Really specific, whether it's healthcare or aging care or cooking at home, like we are focusing on, it's the ability to have that experience for Jennifer that is specifically for Jennifer versus, for Joaquin or Eric. And I think if you can get a lot of these companies and a lot of models to work, I don't know if there's going to be a standardization, if there's going to be standards developed, but if you can get these companies and these ecosystems to work together, I think the value we can provide to people in any industry could be pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I thought I might follow up, Sumati, specifically for you and thinking about, I know you guys are using AI and personalization and thinking about really services to the consumer differently, right? When it comes to cooking and recipes, for instance, in particular. One of the things that we talked about that I think is so interesting in what you're doing is around attracting creators into the platform, which I'd love to talk a little bit more about. We cover the entertainment market as well, and there's a lot of very traditional players who have been very slow to see the value of creators and kind of what they bring to a platform, and it's really not very present in the smart home at all. So you have a really interesting kind of example of what you're doing at Ladle Cooking. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Would love to. So we're building an ecosystem between users, brands, and creators. And our focus really is millennials and Gen Zs, those focus, people between 20 to 48. And as you probably can guess, these people are cooking more at home, whether for different reasons, but actually 60% of people between 20 to 48 want to cook more at home. And 75%, where do they get their inspiration? As you said, creators and influencers. We're not talking about these people, we're not talking about master chefs or people who've been really, trained in the culinary arts. We're talking about creators and influencers on TikTok and YouTube who are, showing all these different amazing recipes, which people love to follow and see. Except most of these consumers are not cooking with that. They are aspiring to. They would love to cook, the Alfredo, the carbonara that Joshua Weissman is cooking. So what we are really doing, Jennifer, is we're building an ecosystem, right? We are pulling in creators into our network, and what we're doing is we're taking recipes from them, and then we are enabling people to personalize that based on a number of different parameters. So it could be their dietary preferences, right? So you could have people say, hey, I'm taking this chili, but I want to make it vegan or vegetarian or keto or paleo or, dairy-free, gluten-free, or I want to swap ingredients, basically their dietary preferences. And by the way, about 20% of Americans today are eating differently. They're choosing to eat differently for a variety of reasons, right? The other thing is we're also personalizing these recipes based on, a number of things like appliances in the kitchen. More and more, and you see these creators influencers doing it too. The younger audiences they don't have these big kitchen renovations. They're using these appliances, like the Instapots and the air fryers and the immersion blenders, these appliances that are $100, $200, $300. And honestly, we are able to have those different appliances used to personalize those recipes. So if you have other appliances rather than your typical, stodgy oven, we can help you personalize and create those recipes with those appliances. And And again, of course, a number of other things too. But we're building this ecosystem with these creators. Our consumers love them, creators love them. We're building that, and we're also providing this to brands and trying to engage them, especially the smart, kitchen appliance companies, and saying, hey, you have an ability to engage with these consumers, especially these demographics, in a way that you haven't been able to do before. And creators are big catalysts in that process.
Yeah, I think that, there's been a sense among device manufacturers that they kind of have to offer all the services themselves because they want the recurring revenue, right? Or the subscriptions that's built on top. And Eric made a great point, earlier. Well, we don't need to start a whole nother business to provide, this piece of service that maybe isn't, what our core is. And so, thinking about partnerships of great applications or brands or services that could be offered, with your devices as one different type of play.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point there, I've actually had conversations with over 58 brands. And interestingly enough, we built the Ladle platform with conversations with some of the top smart kitchen appliance companies. And it's really interesting. They're all trying to build their services. They're trying to actually add different software, and they're not getting the engagement. And I do laugh with some of them. It's like, honestly, people don't really want, the LGs and the Whirlpools of the world telling them what to cook. They really want their, like I said, Joshua Weissman or Binding Barish or, these people that they really believe are the experts, and they rather, so take the stuff that people are doing and consumers love, and take the services from companies like us who have really been focusing on building this AI first platform. Between Ladle AI and Ladle Sous Chef, we're actually building a pretty deep platform in terms of creating the personalization engine. So it is actually better. The whole partnership thing is take what other people are doing well and incorporate it into what you're doing well. And that allows you to get basically greater engagement and adoption.
Yeah, that kind of answers one of the questions that we came in, and I'll open it to Joacim first, and then Eric, if you guys wanted to chime in, which is, I hear a lot about AI. Please give an example of AI, not just smart devices or rules or policy-based, use cases that can help with smart home. Obviously, getting much smarter personalization and pulling from all of these different data feeds that you're working on there. Joacim or Eric, do you guys want to also chime in on other examples of AI to help listeners kind of really envision, what they can see happening in the smart home?
I think in a smart home setting, in the way I see it, it more relates to the cameras and image processing more than like controlling stuff. So I think maybe Eric, you're a better person to answer this.
Okay. Yeah. Eric, did you want to
Well, I
chime
mean,
in?
you had mentioned the AARP. So I think we have a tendency to think of AI as, hey, asking a question or working behind the scenes and solving issues related to cancer. And these are all, you have this huge, expansive use case of AI, right? And they're all awesome. Somewhere in the middle, as quantum computers are developed, we're going to have to use it to battle encryption issues, which will be broken instantly one day, and we're all going to be wondering how to keep our customers safe. But bringing it back to reality and something more in the here and now is, I think, looking at healthcare or wearables and looking at the home, I think you're going to see more use of gestures. So right now we've been talking about voice and this and that, but the gestures also become another equalizer in the smart home with people that may I want to put this in a way where it doesn't sound where it sounds positive, but may not have the technical ability to sort through apps or set things up. Gestures can be really awesome, not just controlling your smart speaker, but a myriad of things. And in general, someone may be disabled, and so gestures may be the only way that they can use to communicate, and this allows them to integrate into their smart home, just like you and I. So I'm really excited about the use. That could be on the outdoor and using, biometrics and AI being able to read certain things as opposed to touching things. But I think on the inside, we're going to see the use of gestures proliferating the smart home. It's quiet, means it's more secure. You're not using your voice to give away valuable information that other people can hear. It's more hygienic if you were to use it in hospitals. And again, I think looking at people that might have disabilities, it's going to allow them to enjoy, many of the features of the smart home that we're already utilizing in our daily lives. So I think we should all be pushing for more gesture, and it's also just fun. It's more fun to be able, we're living in the future. We should be able to be experiencing the film Minority Report right now without touching things.
Different things
So
around.
yeah, so
Well,
I'm excited about that.
yeah, let's stick with the user interface piece here because there's been so much focus on voice with the voice assistants over the past few years. You mentioning gestures. There's of course the vision of kind of interfaceless tech, where again it's making autonomous decisions kind of for you in the background. But then
Yeah.
Flic, of course, the actual tangible controls making a little bit of a comeback at CES. I definitely saw actually more tangible controls than I have in years, which I think is really interesting. And people bringing hardware hubs back, bringing touch panels back, right? Focusing more on the actual panel and the experience of the things that you actually touch. And our data shows, frankly, desire for a choice. Because, depending on what you're doing at that point of the day, or if your hands are dirty, or if they're not, or if you have a mobility disability or not, or, that sort of thing, that you want to have this choice of how you want to interact with your devices. But Yoko, maybe you can chime in on like what you're seeing as the demand for something like a button that's a tangible control.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's my passion, right? To be able to push a button and stuff happens instead of something magically happens. But I think it's very important to work on like both sides, both stimulate the early adopters and the innovators. Sorry, stimulate the innovators by doing really cool stuff, and you can like do a specific dance, and then your favorite music starts or whatever. But that's cool and it's fun. But what we see very often, and I think that's quite evident in all the companies doing controllers for smart homes now also, is that you got to meet that other part of the family. You got to meet the elderly, and but the kids specifically, and the spouse that may not have all the apps and know all the voice commands or creative gestures. You got to meet that person too in order for smart home technology to really cross the chasm and come into the early majority. So I think there has to be a choice. There has to be many different ways in order to activate things or to just mute that music without having pull up your phone. So I think it's just very important to meet everyone. But I hope I mean, of course that's my hope because that's my business. But I don't think the physical touch, the tactile feeling of like activating something, or dimming a light or a volume controller with your hands is going away anyway soon. Um,
Yeah,
that's
maybe you could share a little bit on, since you're also in the senior care side of things, right? What you might have learned around user interface preferences for seniors, kind of specifically. And we also see things like when people are developing products for seniors, is it comfortable to wear? Does it identify that I might be kind of infirm, which nobody wants to signal to the world? Is this something I want to wear, or that it just detects kind of passively? What have you learned about maybe interfaces and designs for seniors specifically?
Well, you touch on the key points. You don't want to look sick. You want to look healthy. You don't want to walk around with an alarm around your wrist. That's clearly signals that you are in need of care quickly. So solutions that can uh, help with that without being too intrusive, clearly. But I also see a lot of uh, it's very different. We we see customer use cases where people use our products in very, very different ways. And I think the markets for senior care is also extremely different. It works very differently in the States compared to how it works in Sweden or the EU or Asia, right? It's well, that's a rabbit hole. But I mean, one interesting use case that we saw some customers doing that serves the elderly is to push a button to activate a preset voice command, because it's easy for people to set up voice commands, and like the installers or the people serving the community knows how to do that, but it's more difficult for the caretakers to remember the voice commands or know exactly how to say it, and they may have a problem talking. So, for example, pushing a button to activate a voice command is like a meta use case, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have a couple other questions that relate to each other around kind of cloud versus local networking, and also the opportunity for router companies, that or companies in the smart home who are bringing routers, to market to kind of leapfrog some of the traditional providers who have not really moved forward with having Z-Wave and Zigbee and Matter integrated into their hub. So, and Eric, I might go to you here first. So one question really is just edge versus crowd. Why do these IoT devices need to be connected? Why are we promoting connected devices on the web versus within the dwelling? Same with security, where the security and monitoring of each device could happen in the router as opposed to in the cloud. And then relatedly, this other kind of point about eufy, TP-Link, kind of having hubs that provide their own Wi-Fi routers, and we're not seeing the router manufacturers adding these smart home standards. Do you see kind of a blend happening here as companies try to fix the failing Wi-Fi home networks and as more devices come online? So, Eric, you might be the most appropriate to, talk about what you think on the kind of local and the network, the state of the network and supporting what's happening across the connected home.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend probably 19 hours discussing that. There's a lot of pieces in there. Some probably appropriate for me to discuss and others not as much. What I can say is that we've obviously, we believe with our solution, and I think when you look at our millions of customers around the world, that we're really playing in the edge. Like we're not pushing the cloud. There are some instances and situations where it's unavoidable. Messages going to your phone and letting you know someone has arrived at your front door and things like that. But when it comes to people's day-to-day security, the video footage and all of that stuff, we don't see the reason why that footage needs to go up into the cloud and then have to charge them for the service that we're building on someone else's cloud platform. So for us, everything is stored locally for the most part. But also the algorithms and a lot of the systems and the connection, if the power were to go out or the Wi-Fi were to go out, and you want your security systems to still be operating. So there's a lot of advantages, to using the edge or using local storage and local processing. That I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but it's the way we do it, and it's the way our customers, and one of the primary motivating factors for our customers to use our services. Having said that, again, looking at voice controls and other things, you're still going to have to utilize the cloud. We're not getting rid of the cloud. We're not saying the cloud is bad. We're just saying that in our use case, we prefer to do things locally. Much of the processing, the communication, and obviously the storage is done locally. And that's the way we're going to be. I think the other part of the question is more complicated, because I want to go back to security. So we're a security company, but in order for security to work fully, it's predicated on a lot of the other systems in your house to be working well, being set up well. And so I would say to me, it's a big gap in education, that we still see a big gap in how customers, whether they're doing it themselves or working with internet providers, and how those systems are set up in the house, and open Wi-Fi, closed Wi-Fi, different pass keys, all the different things that go into it. I think are going to become more and more of a problem as it becomes easier for bad people using AI to break Wi-Fi keys, right? And you've seen this. And I have a good friend who's known as the ethical hacker, and was talking about swarms of miniature, little devices running around in neighborhoods and using AI to crack Wi-Fi. And I know that sounds outrageous and like in the future, but it's already been done. And so AI allows criminals and bad people to do things on a scale that we've never seen before. Much of these things are going to be automated in the future. So going back, when we look at DIY and professional services and this and that, and all these things working together, we develop the hardware and we develop certain systems, but those systems are working with other systems. And how can we get everyone working together to create a more secure uh, solution in the household? So again, I've opened up another rabbit hole here on that conversation, but I think those are the things that I worry about, is the things that are outside of our day-to-day control. And how can we partner? Is it a router company, or is it some other service out there? But we're all working together and we're all kind of in our own little hovels trying to figure things out. But what I don't see as often is us coming together and looking into the future and saying, this is going to be a problem. This is a problem. Oh, here's a quick fix for now. What are we doing collectively as a team? And that also goes back to standards again, which came up in this conversation, is that there aren't. Everyone's rushing. You've seen this in wireless power or any other thing that's like, super and shiny and neat in the future. Everyone at first runs out and creates their own governing boards, competing against different governing boards, trying to create their own key standard. And we're seeing the same thing. And again, the consumer is sitting here while all this stuff is going on, pondering, how do I make all this work? So I don't have an answer. There is no easy solution than all of us coming together and trying to talk more, and not take maybe 3% of our day-to-day focus on, proliferating our platforms to working together more. So
Yeah, I
it
love
sounds
that.
like it's a fantasy novel, but I hope maybe one day it'll
I
happen.
know. We wouldn't have invited you to speak if we didn't think you had all the answers. Like, what? No. But I wanted to share this slide just because this is something we love to just give everybody like a big picture view of. Standards take time, and the market is moving very, very quickly. But when we talk about something like Matter in particular, it's only really been in development for a few years. These things do take time and time for the industry to come together. We're coming up on time, so I did want to kind of do a round, and Eric, you teed it up perfectly, but I'm going to start with Sumati here. Really asking you, what are the challenges that you're really focusing on in solving in 2025? Sounds like mini bots of Wi-Fi hackers are definitely keeping Eric up at night. But what other challenges, either as a business or for the market, do you see ahead of you that you're really focused on, working on this year? Somebody can start.
So, Jennifer, I think the biggest challenge, right? So, with AI now, we do have the ability to create. So, what we are doing is helping people cook what they want to eat, right? They can personalize that on an individual level based on their dietary preferences, based on their appliances. We're also focusing on regions and languages around the world. So, consumers really want this, right? But the biggest issue, of course, is brands, right? A lot of the brands, as we've talked about, they tend to build their services within their particular experiences, right? So you've got these wall gardens that all these brands have, and it's like, okay, we're only going to enable people who use LG, or we're only going to enable this who uses, a Whirlpool appliance, or we're going to only play, so they get to have these wall gardens, and unfortunately, that is really getting in the way, both business-wise, for them to actually reach bigger audiences, but also to create something that people really want to use. I mean, we really have the opportunity, whether it's in healthcare or whether it's in cooking, any industry in the world, that we can actually create solutions that really do improve people's lives, right? Whether people want to do that for cost reasons or whether they want to do it for health, sustainability, or community, we have the ability to do that. I think getting different brands, different companies to work together to say, hey, we really want to focus on this. We really, we rather have 10% of a bigger pie than 100% of a small pie. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. I think technology can solve a lot of things, and I agree with a lot of people about AI having challenges, but I'm really bullish on AI. I feel like there's a lot of things we can do with it. I think it's getting different companies and different entities to say, hey, we're going to work on this together to make things happen and improve people's lives.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Same question to you, Joacim, if you want to chime in on what's the challenge that, you're really focused on tackling this year?
For us, it's like product development and hiring. We're growing, so it's just growth issues. I'm very, very positive and optimistic about 2025 in the smart home industry in particular. So it'll be a fun year.
Okay. Yeah. Constant hiring and staffing issues. For sure. And Eric, if you want to close us out here on challenges right ahead of you that you're focused on in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from our development cycle, if we look at this year, I would say we continue to move forward and try to bring solutions to solve simple problems, whether it's mowing your lawn or cleaning your house. Um, I think one of the bigger things, especially again going back to healthcare wearables, I think the biggest challenge for many of us pushing into that space continues to be that in the United States, its innovation has stalled in many ways based on processes and regulations. You could see it in hearing aids and other things and all this stuff. And I think as we look over the next 5 years as a company, we want to break through those things and we want to find new ways of innovating in spaces that I think, frankly, have just been sitting, doing nothing for decades. And there are people out there that need solutions. And so for us, when we look at smart home and devices, that's something I think we're really excited about exploring.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time and sharing your view of what's going on this year. Really fantastic way to kick off a whole year of conversations. Just to remind everybody, we have connections coming up in May. Call for speakers is open, and also registration is open. And then we have another virtual session on October 9th. We also have several conference series that also have conversations throughout the year that have some more specific focuses. So the Smart Energy Summit, of course, focusing on energy, Connected Health Summit, focusing on connected health and especially aging in place and senior care solutions. Smart Spaces focuses on what's really happening in the multifamily world. Lots of great companies working in connected home aren't just working in single family, but multifamily is really a whole different beast. So really dedicating some time to that. And then feature video focusing on the entertainment. And we're seeing so much crossover between entertainment and smart home, with Roku getting into the smart home world. Obviously, Amazon's in both worlds, Google's in both worlds, Apple's in both worlds. So a lot happening kind of at that crossover. So please join us. If you're interested in any custom marketing services with Parks Associates, reach out to Ashton and Jason and Mindy Sue. And we also have a roundtable coming up really focused on custom integrators and the role of custom integrators kind of in smart spaces. So you can join us for that on February 1st or February 6th. So thank you all so much. Again, Eric, Sumati, Joacim, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you all for your great questions and for joining us. So take care and have a great 2025.